At Christmas dinner, my wealthy grandpa gave everyone a check. My parents snickered, "It's just for display." Another phony check. I grinned and slipped mine into my pocket. The next morning, the bank rang. Only one check went through. Grandpa simply said, "Good. Now I know who's genuine." Have you ever had one moment that rips away everything you thought you knew about your family? For me, it was a simple Christmas dinner, a quiet old man, and 3 plain white envelopes that held not just money, but a brutal, undeniable truth. And trust me, it felt like a joke. Until it absolutely wasn't. It all started at Christmas dinner. Grandpa Walter, his voice so quiet you almost missed it, slid 3 white envelopes across the polished table. "A little Christmas gift for each of you." My parents, Charles and Denise, instantly burst out laughing. My mom actually rolled her eyes, a tight smile on her face. "Oh, Dad," she chirped. "Are we doing the pretend check thing again? So cute." My dad chuckled, swirling his wine, adding, "The man loves his jokes. Just play along, Sam." I didn't laugh. I looked at Grandpa. He just looked tired. I simply said, "Thank you, Grandpa," and tucked the envelope into my coat pocket. My parents went right back to talking about their new car, convinced it was just another harmless joke from an old man. They had no idea. And honestly, I didn't either. Not really. But the next morning I found myself at the bank. I felt strange, like I was doing something wrong, something secret. I handed the check to the teller. She was quiet for a long time. Then she looked up, her face utterly professional and clear. "Your deposit cleared, Miss Reed." And just like that, with those 5 words, it wasn't a joke anymore. "My name is Samantha Reed. I'm 30. And I need to tell you about my family, about Charles and Denise Reed, my parents. To understand that check, you have to understand them. You have to understand the house I grew up in." My parents cared about one thing above all else: looking perfect. Their entire lives were a carefully constructed image. We lived in a huge, beautiful house in a neighborhood where every house was big and beautiful. The lawns were immaculate. The cars were brand new. My mom, Denise, even picked our house specifically because of its grand, winding staircase. "So impressive," she declared. "Great for first impressions." But inside it was just as impressive and just as cold. We had a living room no one was ever allowed to truly live in. The carpet was white. The sofas were white, covered in expensive, scratchy fabric my mother picked straight out of a magazine. "Isn't it elegant, Samantha?" she'd ask. I'd just nod. I remember once when I was 8, I spilled a tiny drop of water on one of those white sofas. The way my mother screamed, you'd think I'd set the house on fire. She scrubbed that spot for an hour, her face tight with anger. "This is why we can't have nice things," she whispered, but her eyes were fixed on me. After that, I never went in that room alone again. My childhood felt like an endless series of photo shoots. My mother was obsessed with our family photos. Every Christmas, Easter, every vacation we had to pose. We had to look happy. We had to look perfect. I remember one Christmas photo. I was 12. Mom bought us all matching, terribly itchy red sweaters. I was frowning. "Samantha, smile," my dad, Charles, snapped. He was by the fireplace, practicing his own relaxed smile. "It's itchy," I mumbled. "Stop it," my mother hissed, her voice low and sharp. She grabbed my shoulders, turning me towards the camera. "Your father and I work hard to give you this life. The least you can do is look grateful for one picture. Now smile." So I smiled. A fake tight smile. My eyes, I remember, looked sad. My mother loved that picture. "We look like a magazine," she'd beam, framing it for the grand piano. Hard work was their favorite phrase. "We've worked so hard for this life," they'd say at parties. Oh, they loved parties. They loved filling their perfect house with other perfect people. The place would echo with loud, fake laughter, reek of expensive wine and perfume. My job? To be the perfect, quiet daughter. Wear the dress mom picked. Smile at the adults. Take their coats. Then when no one was looking, I'd sneak off to my room and read. One time, a woman I didn't know followed me upstairs, looking for the bathroom. She saw me reading. "Hiding?" She smiled, a little embarrassed. "I'm Mrs. Gable." I just nodded. She glanced around my room. The only room in that entire house that actually looked lived in. Posters on the wall, a messy desk. "Your parents are a lot," she said, then giggled. Later, I heard my mother downstairs in her high, bright party voice. "Oh, Samantha is just so shy. She's in her awkward phase. We're hoping she grows out of it." I wasn't shy. I just didn't like their friends. I didn't like the noise. I didn't like the fakeness. The truth is, my parents' hard work was a lie. The perfect house, the new cars, the parties, the pristine white sofas. It all came from one place. It all came from my grandfather, Walter Reed. Grandpa Walter was nothing like my parents. He was self-made. started a construction company with a single truck and 2 ladders, and built it into one of the biggest, most respected firms in the state. He was old-school wealthy, the kind of man who still polished his own shoes and read the newspaper with inky fingers. My dad worked at the company. His title was Vice President of Development. But I once helped Grandpa with office paperwork for a summer. I saw the numbers. Dad's development mostly consisted of playing golf and taking clients to expensive lunches. Grandpa's company paid for my parents' house, their cars, the white carpets. My parents loved Grandpa's money, but they were embarrassed by him. He was too real, too blunt, wore old-fashioned suits, drank cheap coffee. I remember a party a man was talking to my father about stocks. Grandpa walked up. "You don't invest in stocks, Walter?" The man laughed. "No," Grandpa said, his voice deep and steady. "I invest in steel and concrete and people who show up on time. Things you can touch." The man looked confused. My father's face went red. He quickly changed the subject. "More wine, anyone?" Later that night I heard them arguing. "He humiliated me, Denise," my father fumed, "talking about steel and concrete like a common laborer." "I know, Charles, I know," my mother sighed, her voice tired. "He just doesn't understand. He's from a different time. They loved showing him off. He was their proof. My father, the one who built this city," Dad would say, putting an arm around Grandpa for a photo. "But they never loved his values. They never listened to him. They just saw him as their own personal bank. A bank that was old and a little fussy but would always give them money. They never ever thought that bank would close. To my parents, I was a failure. Their greatest disappointment. They never said it out loud, not in those exact words. They were too polite for that. They used other phrases. Samantha is just finding her way. She's creative." Or their favorite. "She's wasting her potential." My parents' definition of success was incredibly narrow. It meant a big house in their neighborhood. A real job, like a doctor, a lawyer, or a vice president of development. It meant marrying someone with a real job and a big house, too. I had none of those things. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Portland. It was small. The floors creaked. The kitchen was tiny. My parents hated it. "It's so small," my mother exclaimed the first time she visited, looking at my old comfortable sofa like it had a disease. "And the neighborhood, Samantha? Do you feel safe here?" "I love it, Mom," I said. And I did. My apartment was mine. The walls were painted a warm, soft yellow. My design sketches and favorite paintings were everywhere. My bookshelves overflowed. It was a space for living, not for showing off. It was messy. It was comfortable. It was real. My job was the other problem. I was a freelance interior designer. "A decorator?" My father scoffed when I told him. "A designer, Dad. I help people make their homes functional and beautiful." "There's no money in paint swatches, Sam," he said, shaking his head. "It's a hobby. You wasted a college degree on a hobby. You should have gone to law school." I almost did. They pushed me so hard. "A law degree is so respectable," my mother would say. "Think of the potential." I was miserable. One night I was crying trying to study for the entrance exam, when Grandpa Walter called. "You sound terrible," he said. "I'm fine, Grandpa." "No, you're not. You sound like you're swallowing rocks." "What is it?" So I told him. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I wanted to make things. Work with color, light, space. Help people. He was quiet for a long time. I thought he was angry too. "All right," he finally said. "Come over on Saturday. Wear old clothes." When I got to his house, he didn't take me to the living room. He took me to his workshop in the garage. It was a big dusty space that smelled like sawdust and oil. He pointed to a pile of old wood. "I need a table for my entryway," he said. "Let's build one." We spent the entire weekend in that garage. He didn't just tell me what to do, he taught me how to measure, how to cut. He taught me about different kinds of wood, about wood grain, about joints. "It's not about the paint, Sam," he said, running his hand over a piece of smooth, sanded oak. "The paint is the easy part. It's about the bones, the foundation. If the joints are weak, the table will fall. Doesn't matter how pretty the paint is." My hands were sore. I had blisters, sawdust in my hair. I had never been happier. When we were done, we had a small, simple, beautiful table. It was strong. "That's real work, Sam," he said, putting a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Honest work. Don't you ever let anyone tell you different." I still have that table. It's in my tiny apartment. I put my keys on it every day. It's the most valuable thing I own. Grandpa Walter was the only one who understood. The only one who asked about my work, not my salary. He'd call me, What problem are you solving today, Sam? I'd tell him about a small apartment with no storage, or a new family with no money for a nursery. And what did you do? He'd ask. I'd share my ideas. I'm building a bench with storage underneath, and painting the walls a color that will make the room feel bigger. Good, he'd grunt. Smart. Honest. That's my girl. He was the only one who saw me. My parents saw my wasted potential. Grandpa saw my work. He had a saying. I heard him say it a lot, usually after he'd seen someone being rude or flashy or fake. He'd watch them, his eyes sharp. Then he'd look at me and say, "Money doesn't test people, Sam. Gratitude does." I didn't really know what he meant. I thought it was just one of his grandpa sayings. What do you mean, Grandpa? I asked him once at a diner. He just left a 50% tip for the exhausted waitress. You watch how people treat those they don't need, he said, sipping his black coffee. You watch how they say thank you. You watch if they mean it. A person can have all the money in the world, but if they aren't grateful, they're poor. They're just an empty room. I nodded. I thought I understood. I didn't. Not really. I never realized that all those years he wasn't just teaching me. He was watching me, and he was watching my parents. He always said, money doesn't test people. Gratitude does. I just never realized that Christmas dinner. That was the final test. The room smelled like pine and roasted duck. Christmas dinner at my parents' house, of course. My mother had been planning the menu for weeks. The table was perfect. A long dark wood table, polished until it gleamed like a mirror. Set with her best china. Plates edged in thin gold leaf. Crystal glasses caught the candlelight, throwing tiny rainbows on the white walls. The centerpiece was a mountain of pine boughs, silver balls, and red berries, so big I could barely see my dad across from me. The atmosphere was stiff. Christmas with my parents wasn't fun. It was a performance. My mother, Denise, in a red silk dress, her hair perfect but her smile tight. She was worried. Charles, do you think the duck is too dry? She whispered. It's fine, Denise. Everything is fine, he said, but he was checking his phone under the table, probably the stock market. I just want everything to be perfect for your father, she sighed. Grandpa Walter sat at the head of the table. He looked small in the huge high-back chair, wearing an old dark green wool sweater. It was clean, but it was old. I saw my mother glance at it, and I just knew she was thinking how inappropriate it was for her perfect Christmas table. I was just trying to be invisible, wearing a simple black dress, sipping my water, counting the minutes until I could go home to my small, quiet apartment. The conversation was all about my parents. Our trip to Aspen was just divine, Mom told Grandpa. We're thinking of buying a small place there. Oh, Grandpa said. He hadn't touched his duck. You have a place here. Oh, Dad. Mom laughed, that high fake laugh. It's an investment. Charles is so smart about investments. Is that right, Charles? Grandpa asked. The market is very strong, Walter. Dad puffed out his chest. You have to know when to move. I watched Grandpa. He just nodded slowly, took a bite of duck, chewed, looked tired. After the main course, Mom cleared the plates, then brought out a fancy dessert, something with chocolate and gold flakes. Then Grandpa cleared his throat. It was quiet, but in that big silent room it sounded like a drum. I have something for you, he said. My parents froze. They looked at him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 3 plain white business-sized envelopes. He slid one to my dad, one to my mom, and one all the way down the table to me. A little Christmas gift for each of you, he repeated, his voice quiet. My parents looked at each other, then they laughed. My mother, Denise, laughed first. It was her high tinkling party laugh. Oh, Dad, she said, picking up the envelope but not even looking at it. You're still playing Santa, huh? This is so cute. She fanned herself with the envelope. What is it this year? A check for 1,000,000 I love yous. My dad, Charles, chuckled. He smirked. He picked up his envelope, tapped it on the table. The man loves his jokes, he said. He looked at me. Just play along, Sam. He loves it. He didn't open his either, just set it next to his wine glass like a napkin. I didn't laugh. I looked at Grandpa, and he was looking at me. His eye, I will never forget his eyes. They weren't twinkling. They weren't happy. They were sad. Deeply, profoundly sad. He looked utterly exhausted. He watched my mother laugh at his gift. He watched my father dismiss it. Then his eyes found mine. I picked up my envelope. Thank you, Grandpa, I said, my voice quiet. He held my gaze, and just for a second he nodded. A tiny, almost invisible nod. And before he looked away, he said something so softly my parents didn't hear. Keep it safe. My heart did a strange, tight little flip. Keep it safe. What did that mean? I held the envelope in my lap. It felt heavy. It felt important. My mother had already forgotten hers, put it on the sideboard next to a stack of dirty dessert plates. She was already talking about her New Year's Eve party plans. My dad had tucked his into his suit jacket pocket, probably without even thinking, like you'd pocket a business card you plan to throw away. The joke was over. The performance continued. I slipped my envelope into my coat pocket. My hand went in and held onto it. I didn't understand what was happening. Not yet. But I knew, deep in my bones, that something had just broken. I sat there at that perfect polished table and I felt the crack. The foundation was giving way. When I left, I hugged Grandpa. Goodbye. His hug was tighter than usual. He held on for an extra second. Drive careful, Sam, he said into my hair. I will, Grandpa. I love you. I love you too, child, he whispered. You're a good girl. You're real. My parents waved from their perfect open doorway. The light from their chandelier spilled onto the perfect lawn. Merry Christmas, my mother called. Don't forget to call your aunt. They were already closing the door. Already moving on. I sat in my cold car for a full minute, my hand in my pocket, clutching that white envelope. It didn't feel like a joke. The drive back to my apartment in Portland was quiet. The streets were mostly empty. Christmas lights blurred past my windows, red and green and blue. My car's heater was broken, so I was freezing. I drove with one hand on the wheel, the other in my coat pocket, fingers wrapped around that envelope. Keep it safe. His words echoed in my head. So cute. My mother's laugh echoed too. The man loves his jokes. My father's smirk. I felt sick. A cold, heavy anger settled in my stomach. They didn't even open them. They didn't even look. They had laughed at him. They had laughed at his gift right in his face. When I got to my building, I practically ran up the stairs. I couldn't wait to be inside my own space. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, breathing hard. My apartment was messy and warm. I turned on one small lamp, made a cup of tea, my hands shaking a little. I sat on the floor, my back against the couch. The envelope was on the coffee table. Just a plain white business envelope. My name, Samantha Reed, was written on the front in his strong, familiar handwriting. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me was afraid to open it. What if it was a joke? A fake check for 1,000,000 hugs? After all this drama, after this heavy feeling, I'd feel so stupid. But what if it was real? Picked it up. I slid my finger under the flap and opened it carefully. I didn't want to rip it. I pulled out the paper inside. It was a check. A real cashier's check. From his personal bank. My eyes went to the pay to the order of line. Samantha Reed. Then my eyes went to the little box with the numbers. My breath just stopped. $100,500. $100,500. I read it again. And again. The signature at the bottom was his. Walter Reed. It was real. I sat there on my floor in my tiny apartment and just stared. My chest felt tight. I think I was supposed to be happy. Excited. I should have been jumping up and down. I'm rich. Right? I didn't feel any of that. I felt heavy. An incredible crushing weight. This wasn't a gift. This was a statement. This was a test. And my parents had failed. He had given them the same envelope, the same chance. And they had laughed. They had tossed it on the sideboard next to the garbage. He knew. He knew they would. He had given me one too. And I had said, thank you. It wasn't a test of me. It was a test of them. He was just showing me the results. I felt a sudden hot wave of respect for my grandfather. It was so sharp it almost hurt. He was smarter than all of them. Stronger. And I felt a deep cold sadness for my parents. They were so blind, so lost in their world of white carpets and potential, that they couldn't see a real thing when it was right in front of them. I didn't know what to do with the check. Cashing it felt wrong. Felt like money. And this wasn't about money. It was about something else. I walked to my desk. On my desk is a small dark wooden box with a smooth lid. It's the table I built with Grandpa in his workshop. I keep my real treasures in it. I opened the lid. The smell of cedar and old paper filled the air. Inside there isn't much. A photo of me and him, covered in sawdust, grinning. A letter my best friend Zoe wrote me when I moved to Portland saying, "You are brave." A small pressed flower from the first bouquet a client ever gave me. Things that mattered. I took the check, folded it once, placed it inside the box right on top of the photo. I closed the lid. Felt right. It was safe. It was where it belonged. It was a symbol of respect. It was proof that he saw me. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking, what should I do? The next morning I woke up feeling hungover. Made coffee. Stared at the wooden box. $100,000. That was a life-changing amount of money. It would pay off my student loans. Let me rent a real design studio. Give me security. A new thought crept in. A small ugly thought. What if my parents were right? What if it was a game? What if this was the real test? What if he was waiting to see what I would do? If I cashed it immediately, would that make me greedy? Would I be just as bad as them? If I didn't cash it, would I be disrespecting his gift? Would I be a fool? I felt so confused, like I was in one of those stories with a riddle. I had to know. It wasn't about the money. It was about knowing if this was real. Was this entire crazy thing real? Or was I imagining it? The story in my head says, curiosity got the better of me. But it wasn't just curiosity. It was a need for truth. I told myself I wasn't cashing it. I was just checking. I pulled out my phone. Opened my banking app. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely log in. I took the check out of the box. I felt like I was doing something wrong, like I was betraying it. I laid it flat on the table. Mobile deposit. I took a picture of the front. My hand was shaking. The picture was blurry. I took it again. A picture of the back. For mobile deposit only. The app spun for a moment. Deposit submitted for $100,500. I felt sick. I put the check back in the wooden box. Closed the lid. I felt small. I felt like I had taken this beautiful, heavy symbol of respect and just tried to turn it into money. I felt like my parents. The next few hours were torture. I sat on my sofa and stared at my phone. I tried to work. I couldn't. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. I was waiting for the deposit failed email. Waiting for the insufficient funds notice. Waiting for the just kidding text from Grandpa. I was waiting for a sign, waiting to find out what was real. The word submitted just hung on my phone screen. I put the phone down, face down on my coffee table. I felt dirty. I felt cheap. What had I done? I had taken his gift, his test, and treated it like a lottery ticket. I went to the kitchen and scrubbed my hands, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I spent the next hour pacing my apartment. I told myself it would be rejected. The bank would send a deposit failed email. Then I would know. I would know it was all a game, and I would put the check back in the box and never look at it again. That would be the end of it. I was almost hoping it would fail. My phone was silent. The silence was loud. After another hour, I couldn't take it anymore. I picked up the phone. My banking app was still open. I refreshed the page. My heart stopped. It didn't just stop. It felt like it was grabbed and squeezed. The pending status was gone. The check was listed under completed transactions. And my account balance. The number at the top of the screen, it had changed. I was looking at a number with 5 zeros at the end. It was real. The deposit hadn't failed. It hadn't been stopped. It wasn't a joke. It was real. Your deposit has cleared. The words from the teller were in my head, but the app was right in front of my face. It was just a number on a screen, but it felt like a mountain had just landed in my living room. My hand shook so hard I dropped the phone on the couch. It was real. I sat down, put my head in my hands. I wasn't happy. I was terrified, because if my check was real, it meant their checks were real too. And they had laughed. They had left them on the table. Oh God. I didn't know what to do. Should I call them? Mom, Dad, that check you laughed at? It was real. Should I call Grandpa? Grandpa, why did you do this? I did nothing. I just sat there frozen. The number on my phone screen felt like it was burning a hole in my apartment. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour, I don't know. Then my phone rang. The screen lit up. Mom. My blood turned to ice. This was it. The other shoe. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. I wiped my sweaty hand on my jeans, picked it up. Hello. My voice was a tiny whisper. Samantha, why didn't you pick up? Her voice was high and tight. She didn't sound like my mom. She sounded sharp. I was in the bathroom, Mom. She repeated. I'll tell you what's up. I just had the most mortifying experience of my life. I stayed quiet. Your father and I were just, cleaning up from Christmas. And I found that envelope your grandfather gave me, the one he gave your father too. We were laughing about it. Her voice was trembling now. She was trying to sound casual, but she was failing. We thought, oh, what the heck? Let's see what the joke is. So I called the bank just to ask. And the manager said the checks were stopped. He said your grandfather had put a stop payment on them yesterday morning. She was talking so fast, running out of breath. He humiliated me, Samantha. He let us. How could he? I still said nothing. I didn't know what to say. Did you talk to your grandfather today? She asked, her voice suddenly cold and suspicious. No. Why? Don't lie to me, Samantha. I'm not lying, Mom. There was a long cold silence. I could hear her breathing. The bank manager, she said, her voice now dangerously low, said that one check did go through. A large one. This morning. She paused. Ours were stopped, but yours went through. I couldn't speak. My throat was closed. He's playing favorites again, she shrieked. The sudden volume made me flinch. It was a sound I hadn't heard in years. The sound from my childhood. The sound of the spilled water on the white sofa. It was raw, ugly jealousy. After everything we do for him. We host him. We take care of him. We manage his life. And you show up twice a year and he gives you... What did he give you, Samantha? Mom, she demanded. I couldn't tell her. I wouldn't. This is ridiculous, she snapped. I'm putting your father on. I heard fumbling. My dad's angry, muffled voice. Just give me the phone, Denise. Samantha, he barked. Hi, Dad. Don't hi, Dad me. Your mother is hysterical. You should have told us. Told you what? I whispered. That you knew. That you knew the check was real. You went behind our backs. You cashed it, didn't you? You scurried off to the bank first thing in the morning like a little thief. I didn't. He's old, Sam. My father's voice changed. He was trying to sound reasonable now. Paternal. The voice he used when he was trying to handle a problem. He's old and he's not thinking clearly. He doesn't know what he's doing. I thought of Grandpa's eyes. Clear. Sad. Steady. He's playing games and you fell for it. And you've created a huge problem for this family. I didn't create anything, I said, my voice suddenly clear and cold. Listen to me, Samantha. That money is not yours. It's family money. Your grandfather is confused. You need to come here and we are going to sort this out. We will put the money into a joint account. We will manage it for you. It's the only fair thing to do. You don't understand finances. You just waste it on your hobby. It's not a hobby, I said. This is not up for debate, he shouted. You have put this family in a terrible position. You should have told us. You laughed at it. I said, the words finally coming out. You didn't even open it. You called it a joke. There was a long, terrible silence. I had said the truth. The one thing they couldn't argue with. My father's voice when it came back was flat and cold. Colder than I had ever heard it. He's an old senile man, Samantha. And you are a very, very foolish girl. He hung up. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear. The dial tone buzzed. He's old. He doesn't know what he's doing. I looked at the number in my bank account. I looked at the wooden box on my desk, the one I had built with him. Money doesn't test people. Gratitude does. My parents were wrong. I knew with a sudden terrible clarity that my grandfather knew exactly what he was doing. The next 2 days were the longest of my life. I was a ghost in my own apartment. I didn't answer my phone. Didn't check my email. My parents called again and again and again. Their names would flash on the screen, Mom or Dad. And I would just watch my stomach twisting until it went to voicemail. They left messages. My mother's were first, tearful and pleading. Samantha, darling, please call me. We're just worried about you. Your father was upset. He didn't mean it. We just want to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. My father's were different. Short and angry. Samantha, stop this childish behavior. Call me now. Then the text started. We know you're there. This is irresponsible. You are tearing this family apart. Me? I was tearing the family apart? Not their greed. Not their laughter. Me. I turned my phone off. The silence was better, but it was also worse. The $100,000 sat in my checking account. Felt like a bomb. I was terrified to touch it. Terrified to even look at it. I bought groceries with my credit card. I didn't want to use the money. It didn't feel like my money. Felt like evidence. I couldn't work. I sat at my design table and stared at a blank page. I tried to sketch, but my hands were still shaking. The colors all looked wrong. Everything looked gray. I was alone. I was rich, I guess, and I had never felt more alone in my life. On the second day, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned my phone on. Ignored the dozen new messages from my parents. I called the only person I could. Zoe. Sam. Oh my God, are you alive? I was about to call the police. Zoe Harper, my best friend since college. She was the opposite of me. Loud, funny, not afraid of anything. She was a lawyer, a real one, as my father would say. She worked for legal aid, helping people who had no money. My parents hated her. Said she was aggressive and a bad influence. I'm not okay, Zoe, I whispered, feeling the tears start. I hadn't cried yet. Where are you? I'm coming over. No. I need to get out of here. Can I meet you? We met at our favorite diner. It was old and smelled like coffee and bacon. I sat in a booth in the back, my hands wrapped around a hot mug of tea. Zoe slid in across from me, her sharp dark eyes scanning my face. Okay, she said, all business. You look like hell. Start from the top. What did they do? So I told her. Everything. The dinner, the laughter, the pretend check. My parents discussed. Grandpa's sad eyes, his words. Keep it safe. Zoe just listened, her face getting tighter and tighter. Then I told her about the next morning. The deposit. The number. Zoe's eyes went wide. $100,000, Sam? Shoo. I hissed, looking around. Holy, she whispered. Then I told her about the phone calls, my mother's mortifying experience. The stop checks, my father's, you're a foolish girl. When I was done, I was crying. Just quiet, tired tears rolling down my face. Zoe was silent, staring at her coffee cup. Zoe. She looked up. Her face was not sad. It was furious. Zoe, don't. I'm going to kill them, she said, her voice a low growl. I am. I'm a lawyer. I can find a way to make it legal. You are tearing this family apart. They are not a family, Sam. They are a corporation. And you just mess with their bottom line. It's not funny, Zoe. I'm not laughing, she said. I am furious. They've been treating you like this your entire life, like you're the broken, weird one just because you're decent. And now your grandpa finally calls them on it. He finally shows you what you're worth. And they call you a thief for being grateful. I don't know what to do, I whispered. I'm so scared. Scared of what? Them, Sam? They can't do anything. It's your name on the check. It's in your account. It's your money. Game over. It's not about the money, I said a little too loud. It's him. It's Grandpa. What did I just do? Did I just get him in trouble? Is he okay? What if my dad is right? What if he's not? Well, Zoe's face softened. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her hand was warm and strong. Sam, look at me. Your grandfather is a genius. He is the smartest one in this whole mess. He's not old and confused. He's strategic. He knew exactly what they would do. He's been watching them. He's been watching you. This wasn't a gift of money, Sam. It was a gift of truth. I took a shaky breath. So what do I do now? Nothing, she said. You live your life. You pay off your loans. You rent that studio you've been dreaming about. You use it. That's the best thank you you can give him. And you block your parents' numbers. I can't do that. Okay, fine, she sighed. Baby steps. Just wait. Wait for the next move. I drove home feeling not better but stronger. Zoe had put some steel in my spine. He's a genius. It was a gift of truth. I got to my apartment, checked my mailbox, and there it was. Not a business envelope. It was thick, heavy, cream-colored cardstock. My name, Samantha, was written on the front in my grandfather's handwriting. That strong, clear, old-fashioned script. My heart was back in my throat. This was it. I went upstairs, my keys shaking in my hand. I sat on my sofa, opened it. There was no letter, no explanation. Just a single card as thick as the envelope. It was printed, not handwritten. Dinner. Saturday, 7 p.m. Underneath, the address of his house. Not my parents' house. His. That was it. My blood ran cold. This was the next move. This was the showdown. Called Zoe. He invited me to dinner, I said. Saturday. Okay, she said, her voice cautious. Just you. I think so. It just has the time and place. So what? Zoe said, her voice getting that lawyer-like edge. You think he's about to confront them? Is he going to have them there? Is this an ambush? I looked at the simple, elegant card. Dinner. Saturday. 7 p.m. I thought about the stop checks. I thought about the $100,000 in my bank account. I thought about the decades of watching and listening and testing. A calm, cold, sad feeling settled over me. No, Zoe, I said quietly, staring at the card. I don't think he's about to confront them. Then what? I think he already did. I think the test is over. This is him announcing the results. The drive to my grandfather's house on Saturday night was the loneliest drive of my life. My little car felt small on the wide, dark roads that led to his neighborhood. My parents lived in a new, flashy neighborhood. Grandpa lived in the old, original, wealthy part of town. His house wasn't a modern white and glass box like my parents'. It was a 30-year-old brick house, solid and timeless and real. It was set back from the road, hidden by old huge oak trees. I parked my car behind a row of other, much more expensive cars. I recognized my parents' silver Mercedes. My stomach dropped. They were here. This wasn't just announcing the results. This was an execution. And I didn't know if I was the guest of honor or the main course. I walked to the front door, my heart beating in my ears. I thought about turning around, thought about getting in my car, driving back to Portland, and never speaking to any of them again. But I thought of Grandpa. His sad eyes. Keep it safe. I had to see this through. I rang the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately. It wasn't Grandpa. It was his housekeeper, Maria. She had worked for him for as long as I could remember. She smiled at me, a warm, genuine smile. Samantha, he is waiting for you in the study. Are my parents here? I whispered. Maria's smile faded. They are in the dining room, she said, and her tone told me everything. She led me down the hall. My parents' house was all white walls and bright, harsh lights. Grandpa's house was warm. The walls lined with books. The floors were dark wood, covered in old, beautiful rugs. It smelled like old books and wood polish and the faint, sweet smell of his pipe tobacco. It smelled like home. She opened the doors to the study. Grandpa Walter was sitting behind his huge, dark desk. He wasn't working. He was just sitting there, his hands folded, waiting for me. Hello, Samantha, he said. His voice was calm. Grandpa, I said. I wanted to run to him, to cry, to ask him a million questions. I just stood there. You look nervous, he said. I am. Don't be, he said. You've done nothing wrong. Sit down. I sat in the big leather chair across from his desk. He looked at me, his eyes clear and sharp. You got my invitation? I nodded. They're here, aren't they? Yes, he said. They are. Now before we go in there, I want you to know something. What happens in that room tonight has nothing to do with you. It is not your fault. It is not your problem. This is between me and them. It has been for 30 years. Your only job tonight is to be quiet and to be real. Can you do that? Be real. Just be yourself, Sam. That's all you've ever been. It's all I've ever asked. He stood up. He was an old man, but he stood up straight. He looked powerful. He was wearing a dark suit, not his usual old sweater. Let's go to dinner, he said. He put his hand on my back and we walked out of the study. We walked down the hall to the dining room. I felt like I was walking into a bad dream. My parents were standing by the fireplace. They were not talking. My mother, Denise, was wearing a black dress that was too expensive. Her smile was stiff, stretched so tight I thought her face would crack. Her eyes were red. My father, Charles, stood with his hands in his pockets, staring into the unlit fireplace. His face was tight with anger, a dark blotchy red. They both turned when we walked in. My mother's eyes flew to me. Her smile wobbled. Samantha, you came. She looked at Grandpa. Dad, this is a surprise. Is it? Grandpa said, his voice calm. He walked to the head of the table. Please sit. My parents sat on one side. I sat on the other, alone. Grandpa stayed standing at the head of the table. He wasn't carrying a platter of food. He was carrying a thin folder, a legal folder made of beige cardstock. He set it on the table in front of him. The sound was soft, but it echoed in the silence. You'll each find your name on these papers, he said. He didn't look at the folder. He looked at my parents. My mother's voice cracked. She burst into tears. They weren't sad tears. They were angry, frustrated tears. You humiliated us, Dad, she cried, her voice rising. You stopped our checks. You made us look like fools after all we've done for you. What have you done for me, Denise? Grandpa asked. His voice was still quiet, still calm. It cut through her sobs like a knife. She stopped. Oui. I did stop the checks, Grandpa said, nodding calmly. I did. He looked at my mother. He looked at my father. For 30 years I have given you everything. A house, cars, a job you don't do. An allowance for a woman your age. I have given and you have taken. And you have not once said thank you and meant it. That's not true, my father said, finding his voice. At Christmas, Grandpa continued as if my father hadn't spoken, I gave you a final gift. A simple test. I gave you the same thing I gave Samantha. My parents both looked at me. My mother's look was pure poison. I gave you a check, a real one, a gift. And you laughed. You laughed at me. You threw it on the sideboard with the garbage. You rolled your eyes, Denise. You smirked, Charles. You called me a joke. His voice was so calm. That's what made it so terrifying. He wasn't yelling. He was just stating facts. You laughed at a gift, so you laughed at me. It was a test, my father shouted, slamming his fist on the table. The crystal glasses rattled. A sick, twisted old man's game. Life is a test, Charles, Grandpa said. You failed. And her, my father yelled, pointing at me. The vein in his forehead was purple. You rewarded her for what? For doing nothing. For being a failure. For wasting her potential. She's done nothing. The room was silent. I could feel all their eyes on me. I felt small. Like I was 12 years old again in the itchy red sweater. I looked at my grandfather. He was still looking at my dad. She did everything, Grandpa said, his voice so quiet, so full of power I almost cried. She did everything, he repeated. She listened. When I spoke, she listened. When I taught her, she learned. She works. She builds. She respects herself. She said thank you for a gift she didn't even know was real. He turned his clear, steady eyes on me. She didn't laugh. The silence that followed. It was sacred. That's the only word for it. It was the sound of a 30-year-long lie finally dying. It was the sound of truth filling a room. My father's face was white. My mother was completely, utterly silent. Her mouth open. They had nothing left to say. He had taken all their words away. My grandfather, Walter Reed, did not move. He stood at the head of his table, a king in his own home. My father's fist was still on the table. My mother's face was pale and blotchy. Grandpa picked up the thin beige folder. He opened it. He slid it across the polished wood table. It stopped right in front of me. This is yours, Samantha, he said. I looked down. My hands were in my lap. I was afraid to touch it. My father leaned forward, squinting. What is that? What is this? More games. I put my hands on the folder. I opened it. It was not a check. It was paper after paper of legal documents. My eyes just scanned the words. I didn't understand all of them. I saw last will and testament of Walter Reed. I saw durable power of attorney. I saw transfer of deed. I saw articles of incorporation for Reed Construction. And on every single page, in the places for executor or beneficiary or trustee, I saw my name. Samantha Reed. My breath left my body. This wasn't the $100,000. This was everything. This was the company, the house, the trust. What is that? My mother whispered. She was pale. She looked sick. What is that, Samantha? She asked again, her voice rising. I couldn't speak. I just looked at my grandfather. It's my estate, Denise, Grandpa said calmly. It's my legacy. You can't do that, my mother stammered. You can't. Charles is your son. He's the vice president. It's his. Charles has a title, Grandpa said. He does not have the job. He has never done the job. He has a salary which I have paid. You can't do this, my father roared. He stood up, his chair scraping violently on the wood floor. I'm your son. She's a child. She doesn't know anything. She knows how to work, Grandpa said. She knows how to listen. She knows how to build. This is illegal, my father yelled. You're old. You're senile. She tricked you. She manipulated you. He was looking around the room, desperate, like he was looking for someone to agree with him. You're not well, Dad. You're sick. You need help. We're going to get you help. My mother caught on. Yes, Dad. You're not thinking clearly. This test, it's not normal. We're worried about you. They were trying to take his power. They were trying to call him crazy. I watched horrified as they tried to turn this on him. Grandpa just watched them. He let them talk. He let my father rant. He let my mother cry her fake, worried tears. He let the silence stretch out after they were done, after they had said all the ugly, desperate things. My father was breathing hard, his suit jacket bunched up. My mother was dabbing her eyes with a napkin, her face a mask of concern. Grandpa waited. Then he spoke, and his voice was not the voice of a senile old man. It was the voice of the man who built a company from a single truck. It was steel. I am not sick, Charles. I am not confused, Denise. I have never seen more clearly in my entire life. He looked at my father. He looked at my mother. I already have, he said. My mother looked confused. Have what? You said I can't do this, Grandpa said. I'm telling you I already have. The papers are signed. They are filed. My lawyer, Mr. Miller, has the originals. These are your copies. It is done. My father's face, it collapsed. The anger, the bluster. It just died. He looked old. He looked weak. He looked like an empty room. He sank back into his chair. My mother started to speak. She opened her mouth. A little sound came out. A grunt. Grandpa's voice cut through the air. It was not loud. It was final. He looked at his son. He looked at his daughter-in-law. Now I know who's real. That was it. That sentence. Just 5 words. But it was the end. It ended everything false in that room. It ended 30 years of lies. It ended the perfect image. It ended the hard work. It ended them. My mother stood up. Her movements were stiff like a robot. She picked up her purse. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Grandpa. She just walked to the door. My father sat there for another second. He looked at the folder in front of me. He looked at his father. His eyes were full of something I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was hate. A deep, cold, empty hate. Then he stood up, straightened his suit jacket, and followed his wife out of the room. We just sat there. We heard the front door open. We heard it slam shut. The slam echoed through the big, quiet, solid house. And then there was peace. We sat in the silence. I was still staring at the open folder. Executor. Trustee. Samantha Reed. My hands were shaking. I was rich. I was in charge of everything. I looked at my grandfather. He was still standing. He looked tired. He looked old, but he looked free. He let out a long, long breath. It sounded like it had been held in for 30 years. Well, he said, his voice soft now. I suppose Maria has kept dinner warm. He sat down. He picked up the small bell by his plate and rang it. I just stared at him. Grandpa, I whispered. My voice was broken. I can't. Can't what? He asked. I don't know how to do this. The company, the trust. I'm a designer. I paint walls. I don't know how to run a construction company. Maria came in pushing a cart. She didn't look surprised that my parents were gone. She just started setting out plates. Roasted chicken, vegetables, warm bread. Grandpa looked at me. He smiled. A real warm smile. I taught you how to build a table, didn't I? Yes, but you started with a pile of wood. You measured. You cut. You learned the joints. You learned the bones. It's the same thing, Sam. Just a bigger table. He put a piece of chicken on my plate. We'll hire people to do the parts you don't know. You just be the boss. You just be real. You'll be fine. You're the only one I trust to be. We ate dinner, just the two of us at that long polished table. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about my parents. We didn't talk about the folder, which I had closed and placed on the chair next to me. He asked me about my work. Tell me about that project you were working on, he said. The one for the new family and the small apartment, the nursery. That's the one. And so I told him. I told him how I had built a crib with storage drawers underneath. I told him about the color I found. A soft yellow that made the tiny room feel sunny and big. He listened. He nodded. Smart, he said. Good bones. We talked about spring planting. He wanted to plant new rose bushes along the front walk. I told him which colors I thought would look best. We talked like we always had. After dinner, we had coffee in the study. Before I left, he walked me to the door. I'm scared, Grandpa, I said, my voice quiet. I know, he said. He put his heavy, warm hand on my shoulder. That's why I know you're the right one. The ones who aren't scared. They're the problem. He reached into his pocket and handed me a small folded piece of paper. Not a check. Just a note. Read this later, he said. He hugged me. Drive safe, Sam. I drove home. I felt numb. Like I was floating. I got to my apartment. Sat on my sofa. I opened the note. His handwriting. Money changes hands every day. Respect only once. I cried. I finally cried. Not for my parents. Not for the money. I cried for him. For his long, lonely life, watching his family turn into fakes. I cried because he saw me. A week later, I sat in a big polished office. The sign on the door said Miller Grant and Associates. Grant Miller was a kind man with glasses and a gentle smile. He looked a little like my grandfather. Your grandfather is a very, very smart man, Samantha, he said as I signed my name page after page. He's put a lot of trust in you. I know, I said. My hand was steady. The numbers didn't matter. The money was just money. It was a tool. It was a result. The lesson mattered. I'm still a designer. I have a studio now, a nice one. I hire other young designers and I pay them well. I'm also the boss of Reed Construction. I sit at a big table in a boardroom. I listen. I learn. I make decisions. It's just a bigger table. I never heard from my parents. Not directly. Their lawyers sent letters, of course. They tried to contest the will. They said Grandpa was senile and under undue influence. But Grandpa was smart. He had been documenting his clear mind for years. He had letters from doctors. He had videos. The case was thrown out. They lost. They lost everything. Because they had already lost. They thought the check was fake. But the only fake thing in that house that Christmas night was their love. I still drive past that first bank sometimes. The one where I made the deposit. I remember the feeling, the shaking hands, the dread. And I remember the call that changed everything. It wasn't the call from the bank telling me the money was real. It was the call from my father telling me I was a foolish girl. That was the moment. The moment I knew he was wrong. The moment I knew my grandfather was right. The moment I finally understood what I was worth. And that decency, quiet and simple and real, was finally worth more than dollars. What about you? Have you ever had a moment that revealed someone's true character? Or changed your perspective on what truly matters? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear them.